So this video is about making this bowl, which I am calling the Penta Lamination Bowl, after Frank Penta, a gentleman I met in Greensboro at the North Carolina Woodturning Symposium in early November this year. Frank had a number of bowls with this type of lamination in it, and he described to me how to do it. So this is my first attempt at it. The one challenge I had is because the grain direction is running vertical, I made the grain direction of the surrounding woods also run vertical, which gave me end grain on the top, which was not an issue, but it also gave me end grain down here around the floating ring, which was a challenge. It came out good, and I really like the look of the bowl. It came out very nice. So thank you, Frank, for teaching me how to do it. And this video will describe the method to the rest of the world. So in the new method I learned when I was in Greensboro, it's using strips, thin strips. I have these laid out by thickness from maybe a quarter or a hair more down to a 1/16 of an inch probably. Most of these were the drops from when I ripped lumber, so it's a good use for scraps. But I've got to laminate them together, so I need them to be flat, so I'm going to run them all through the drum sander. Now that I have all the strips flat and ready to laminate together, I'm going to trim them to length. Okay, I have my strips all arranged the way I want to glue them up. I have some Titebond 3 in here, a paintbrush, and I took Frank's suggestion, put wax paper on my bar clamps so they can't get any more glue on them. To give me some room to work, I'm going to take out about half of these. I'm going to try to leave a thick piece on the end. And I'm hoping to get all these glued up before my 15 minutes of working time is done. I'll show a little bit of the glue up. Okay, I got all that done in about 10 minutes, so I had plenty of time. So there's my lamination. I'm going to try to get at least one side flat so I can put it down on my table saw for cutting. Now that I have a good flat edge that'll lay nicely on the sled, I'm going to try to trim this edge. But ultimately I'm going to flip it around and cut in that direction. Now I got a good edge that'll lay up against my rail, and I'm going to try to cut. Frank suggested 10 degrees, and I'm either 10 or 11, so I'm pretty good. I'm going to start by cutting this little section off and work my way up. I am trying to hold this thing very, very tight on the sled because I don't want it walking around. After cutting the strips at 10 degrees, I flipped every other one and scrambled them up a little bit to make for an interesting pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this up. I won't show it on the video. It's the same process as yesterday. So I now have the lamination complete, and I'm just going to try to flatten it a little bit before I cut on the miter saw to give me some good edge. At least one side needs to be really flat. So I have the stop block here set for 1.5 inches. That's what I'm trying to get, and I think I can get 12 segments out of this with a little bit to spare. Before I start cutting strips at 1.5 inches, I want to trim this edge so it's clean and trim this edge so it's good sitting up against the fence. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll slide it up against the stop block and start cutting strips. I'm ready to cut segments. I went ahead and trimmed this one end and made a mark at where I want the segment length, which is 1.9 inches. I've got the stock block set and clamped so that it comes right down on that line. So I'll show cutting a couple of segments. I'm going to have to flip this over every time. So I've got a ring together that's 7 inches in diameter, which is exactly what my design calls for, which was based on being able to get 12 segments out of that lamination. I do have a handful of pieces left that I can laminate back together for the next one. I measured the diameter at 7 inches. All the joints look perfect. So it is ready for glue up. Well, I have the feature ring done, and since the grain direction is pretty much up and down, I'm going to make that same grain direction for all of the rings. This is my design, so I have 3 other rings to make. So I will do that by cross-cutting my strips before I cut them into segments. I won't show that on the video. So I cut strips out of 6/4 walnut. So this will be the direction. The end grain's going up this way, so that'll put my grain in the right direction. I'm just going to put a line on top of each of these. So I have the wedgie sled set for 24 segments, and I've got this stop block set for 0.79 segment length. So I'll show cutting a couple segments. So I put the first ring together. The joints look good. It's the right diameter. It's 6 inches. So this will be the base ring for the bowl. I will go ahead and make the other 2 walnut rings the same fashion, but I won't show that on the video. I'm putting together the Penta Lamination bowl. I've got a floating bottom for the bottom ring and a ring that'll cover that for number 2. It's time to add the final ring. So as I was turning on the Penta Lamination bowl, I actually cut through and could see where the floating ring was. So I cut it off, and I've got a new bottom to put on it. I made a thinner ring, so it dimensionally should be about the same. But I'm going to glue this one on, and then I think I'm going to do some turning on it, because I never cut through and expose a floating bottom before. I'll get a little bit of turning on here. I think I see what the problem is. With the end grain running this way, as soon as I get really thin down here close to the floating ring, it breaks off. So I guess I'm going to have to resort to sanding to get this to conform. At least that's what I'm going to try. Well, sanding did the trick. I don't think I'm ever making a floating bottom with the end grain going vertical again, but sanding did it. Okay, I am ready to remount the Penta Lamination bowl onto the new bottom. Well, the turning is complete, and I'm going to go to sanding next, which I won't show in the video. And then I'll put 2 coats of friction polish on it and a couple coats of carnauba wax. Sanding is complete all the way down to 600 to 1000 grit. I'm going to put on the 2 coats of friction polish. I'll show one of them.